I want you to try a little thought experiment with us right now.
Just a quick visual exercise.
Yeah. Imagine, if you will, a simple straight line drawn on a blank piece of paper. Just a standard horizontal line.
Right.
Now, at the far left end of this line, I want you to place a massive overarching concept. Let's call it good. Or, if you prefer, order.
Order works well, yes.
Then let your mind travel all the way over to the exact opposite end, the far right side of that line. Over there, you have evil. You have chaos.
The ultimate polarity.
Exactly. And this is, without a doubt, the most intuitive, fundamental way that human beings structure reality, right?
It is the default setting of the human mind.
We view our entire world, our entire existence, really, through a lens of absolute, uncompromising opposites. Up and down, left and right, light and dark, success and failure.
It's the foundational geometry of how we navigate the world.
Right, it's hardwired. But what if you were to find out that those two opposite ends, the very extremes of absolutely everything you understand about the universe, what if they are actually at the exact same point?
It is a premise that completely shatters our everyday understanding of geometry, of logic, really.
It breaks your brain a little bit.
It does. And that profound dismantling of perspective is exactly our mission for today's deep dive. We are setting out to systematically break down the two-dimensional illusion of opposites.
Which is no small task.
No, it's not. What we are going to explore today is a deeply mind-bending metaphysical inquiry. And it doesn't just dabble in abstract philosophy. It aggressively, rigorously merges the physical laws of thermodynamics, the astrophysics of our observable universe, the hidden structures of our language, and the ancient cognitive mapping that is hardwired into your brain.
And the stack of sources we are pulling from today to do this is, it's nothing short of extraordinary.
It really is a unique collection.
We are drawing from a fascinating collection of materials originating from Studio 5 Edmonton, specifically focusing on the deeply intricate works of a thinker named Conroy Bogle.
And to give you, the listener, a bit of a roadmap for how this deep dive came together, we are looking at a timeline that spans almost a decade of intense intellectual pursuit.
A decade, yeah.
The foundational concept we'll be discussing, which the author officially terms the same opposite, or simply TSO, was first coined by Bogle way back in 2017.
In a foundational text called the Tarching. And yes, for those of you catching the linguistic nod there, that is very intentionally written in the spirit of Lao Tzu's ancient Tao Te Ching.
What's fascinating here is the timeline. There's a stark contrast in how these ideas were generated over the years. Back in 2017, the author's stated initial goal was to deliberately isolate himself.
Right, he wanted to do it all himself.
Exactly. He wanted to, quote, discover these things for himself, effectively removing the need for any outside interpretation or influence. He was sitting alone in a room, trying to build an entire philosophical framework of the cosmos from the absolute ground up.
Just a single human mind trying to map the infinite.
Precisely. But if we fast forward to our primary source material today, dated March 2, 2026, we see an incredible evolution. We now have these fresh, incredibly profound expansions of his original ideas.
The proof.
What the author now refers to as the proof of the same opposite. And all of this is available at www.boglespapers.info, by the way. But this proof has been generated collaboratively with modern artificial intelligence models, specifically Microsoft's Copilot and OpenAI's ChatGPT.
I have to pause on that because it's almost too perfect. You have this concept about the merging of absolute extremes, and the author's own methodology perfectly mirrors it.
It is a remarkable structural parallel.
Right. On one end of the spectrum, you have a completely isolated, solitary human philosopher in 2017. And on the exact opposite end, you have the 2026 synthesis using a massive global AI hive mind trained on all of human knowledge, and they meet in the middle to prove the exact same point.
It really is a beautiful meta-level convergence.
Wow.
A synthesis of deeply human introspective philosophy and advanced computational logic.
It's wild. It provides a highly unique lens through which to view reality. But before we begin mapping the cosmos, we need to fundamentally redefine our terms.
We must establish the groundwork first.
Right. And to you, the listener sitting with us right now, brace yourself, because we are about to push the boundaries of how you perceive your daily reality.
We are going to challenge some very deeply held assumptions.
We are starting with redefining good and evil, or, to put it in a way that really caught my eye in the text, the thermodynamics of morality.
A provocative phrase.
It is. Now, right off the bat, we need to make something crystal clear here. When we use terms like good, evil, God, or the devil today, We are completely stepping away from dogmatic endorsements or religious preaching.
Entirely. This is not a theological endorsement.
We aren't taking sides. We aren't telling you what to believe. We are treating these theological and cosmological terms purely as the analytical philosophical frameworks presented by the author in the text.
That distinction is crucial. The question of good and evil has traditionally been locked inside very rigid moral or theological boxes.
The thou shalt nots.
Exactly. If I ask someone to define good, they will usually frame it as a prescribed behavior. Thou shalt do this, thou shalt not do that. Be kind to your neighbor, don't steal.
Basic societal rules.
But Bogle's papers execute a massive paradigm shift. The text reframes good and evil not as moral choices, but as thermodynamic metaphysical orientations.
Thermodynamic orientations.
Yes, they are not rules of behavior, they are vectors. They are literal physical directions of movement in the architecture of the universe.
Okay, let's unpack this. I want to slow down and process this because I want to make sure I'm tracking, and I want to make sure the listener is tracking.
Of course.
You're saying the text divorces good and evil entirely from human empathy or morality.
In this specific framework, yes.
Like, if I help an old lady cross the street, is that just a physics equation to this framework? If I clean my room, am I performing a thermodynamic act of good? But if I just let my coffee sit there and get cold, allowing its heat to disperse into the room, am I somehow siding with the devil?
In a strictly structural metaphysical sense, yes. The text is completely stripping away our anthropocentric view of morality. Let's break down how the text defines good.
Okay.
In this framework, good, which the author heavily aligns with the concept of God, is the vector of order. It is life. It is ascent. It is the act of rising.
Okay.
It is what the text beautifully describes as a will toward form. When you clean your room, you are exerting energy to impose order on a chaotic environment. You are demonstrating a will toward form. And in the strict language of physics, this orientation toward order is defined by low entropy.
Low entropy. Okay, we hear that word thrown around a lot in sci-fi movies, but let's actually unpack what it means for the person listening who might not have a physics degree.
Certainly. Entropy, in its simplest formulation, is a measure of disorder, its randomness, or the dispersion of energy in a system. The natural, unyielding law of our universe, the second law of thermodynamics, dictates that everything, everywhere, is slowly but inevitably drifting toward higher entropy.
Everything falls apart.
Essentially, yes. If you build a magnificent sandcastle on the beach, the wind and the waves will eventually reduce it back to a flat plane of sand. A sandcastle crumbles. It never spontaneously assembles itself out of a random gust of wind.
Right.
Heat dissipates into a cold room. The ambient heat in a room never spontaneously gathers itself into a perfectly boiling sphere of water. Therefore, a state of low entropy is a state of highly concentrated organization.
It's order.
It is the preservation of structure. It is the enabling of persistence. It is the very foundation that allows complex biology, like you and me, to exist. That ordered complexity, that active, persistent resistance against the cosmic crumbling, is what the author mathematically defines as good.
And here's a fascinating, almost slightly rebellious detail from the text that I absolutely love.
The critique of the terminology.
Yes, the author points out that low entropy represents literally all the power, all the complex organization, and all the true ascent in the universe. It is the ultimate structural triumph.
It is the pinnacle of existence.
Right. But because of this massive significance, the text argues that the scientific community completely dropped the ball on the naming convention.
It is quite funny.
Bogle suggests that we should actually rename low entropy to high entropy, and vice versa. It's a critique of the magnitude. Like, why are scientists giving the lowest possible mathematical score to the single most powerful, magnificent organizing force in reality?
It is a humorous but analytically sharp critique of our scientific nomenclature. If order is the ultimate achievement of the cosmos, assigning it a low value feels deeply counterintuitive to its structural triumph. Bogle is arguing that the nomenclature should reflect the magnitude of the achievement.
Which makes total sense when you frame it like that.
Now, if we move to the exact opposite end of this vector, we find the definition of evil. If good is the will toward form, evil, which the text aligns with the devil, is the descent.
The falling apart.
It is chaos. It is randomness, death, and dissolution. In strictly thermodynamic terms, it is the complete surrender to high entropy. Where order binds things together, chaos disperses them.
Which brings us to this incredibly tangible metaphor the text uses to help us visualize this orientation. It uses gravity.
A very grounded example.
Literally, the text notes that the act of falling inherently means being subject to gravity. You are yielding to a force larger than yourself. And by the strict binary logic presented in these papers, the more massive an object is, the more it is fundamentally ascending.
Because mass implies gravity.
Exactly, because in this framework, mass is concentration. Mass is power. Power equates to good. Therefore, if you are a smaller object being subjected to a larger object's gravitational pull, if you are physically falling toward it, you are experiencing a descent into evil. You are losing your autonomous order to a greater force.
And this raises a profound question about how deeply these physics are wired into our actual biology. The text delves into cognitive mapping, pointing out that human cognition universally encodes this exact geometry.
This blew my mind.
It is fascinating. Across virtually all human cultures, regardless of language or geography, we instinctively map the concept of UP with good. Think about our phrasing. We talk about rising above a challenge. We hold high principles. We look up to a higher power. We are in high spirits.
Yeah, everything good is elevated.
Conversely, we map down with beat AD. We fall from grace. We descend into madness or disorder. We feel low. We hit rock bottom.
So for you listening to us right now, think about what this actually implies. It means your brain isn't just making up cute, poetic metaphors when you tell your friend you're feeling down today.
It is a literal physical mapping.
According to this text, your intelligence is reflecting a deep structural feature of how reality itself is mechanically modeled. Your brain is intuitively, subconsciously feeling the thermodynamic drag of entropy and the gravitational pull of chaos, and it is physically labeling it down and bad.
It's mind-blowing to think that our everyday casual colloquialisms are just echoing the fundamental laws of thermodynamics.
It truly is a remarkable synthesis of mind and matter. It suggests that consciousness itself is a thermodynamic sensor.
Exactly. But the author doesn't stop at human cognition or earthly examples. The text forces us to transition to the cosmic map.
We have to zoom out, way out.
We must take these thermodynamic vectors of good and evil, of order and chaos, and project them onto the literal, observable universe.
Right, because if this isn't just poetry, if good is a literal physical vector of low entropy organization, and evil is a physical vector of high entropy dissolution, we should be able to point a telescope up at the night sky and physically see them.
We should be able to spot them out there.
You should be able to spot good and evil. So where do we see this will toward form in space? The text is incredibly explicit here. It points directly to stars. Stars are the ultimate cosmic symbols of good.
Consider what a star actually is from a purely thermodynamic perspective. We exist in a universe that is vastly, overwhelmingly determined to drift into a state of cold, disconnected, random particles.
The universe wants to be empty and cold.
But a star says no. A star is a localized region where matter actively, violently resists the universal tendency toward dispersal. Through the sheer force of gravity, it pulls scattered matter together. It ignites it.
And build something.
It creates a furnace that fuses simple elements into the complex heavy elements required for planets and biology. And it radiates the sustained energy that makes life possible. A star is a local victory of order against the cosmic drift toward entropy. It is the universe actively organizing itself.
A local victory of order, that is such a beautiful phrase.
It recontextualizes the night sky.
It makes looking up at the night sky feel entirely different. You aren't just looking at burning gas. You are looking at the universe's resistance movement against chaos.
Or resistance movement, yes.
But the author pushes us to follow this vector even further. If a star is a local victory, what happens if we follow the ascent of order to its absolute extreme mathematical limit? What is the undeniable heavyweight champion of organization in our universe?
The absolute extreme.
And the answer the text provides here completely floored me. The ultimate peak of good is the black hole.
Yes, which requires a massive repositioning of an object we traditionally associate with absolute destruction.
Seriously, I had to stop and reread that section. We are taught that black holes are these terrifying cosmic garbage disposals that eat solar systems and destroy light. And you're telling me this text views them as the ultimate architectural achievement of the universe.
It seems contradictory at first.
How is a black hole good?
By adhering strictly to the thermodynamic vectors we just established. Remember, good is the will toward form. It is the compression of matter, the ultimate resistance to dispersal.
Okay.
A star is a great organizer, but it's still burning off energy. It is still slowly losing mass. It is radiating its order away.
So it's not perfect.
No, but a black hole. The text argues that the black hole compresses matter and information into an absolute singular unity. It takes the scattered chaos of the universe and forces it into a single point of infinite density.
It's singularity.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It is the philosophical concept of the one taken to its absolute physical mathematical limit. It brings everything it touches into an ultimate state of coherence. Nothing escapes. Nothing disperses. It is the perfection of gravity.
And the author leans into this hard. Bogle states that black holes are actually this universe's pinnacle of good. In fact, just like his critique on the naming of entropy, the text suggests that scientists should rename black holes to black peaks.
Black peaks.
Because they literally represent the absolute peak of gravity, the peak of unity, and the peak of order. They are the summit of the mountain of good.
What is conceptually fascinating here is the necessary counterbalance to that peak. If the black peak is the ultimate good, the ultimate concentration of matter, what is the ultimate evil on this cosmic map?
The text identifies it as the vacuum of empty space, the void, absolute nothingness.
The pure absence of structure.
The void is the devil in this framework. And honestly, when you apply the vector of entropy, it makes perfect, terrifying sense.
It does.
The vacuum of space is the most efficient engine of dissolution the universe has ever produced. It accelerates entropy. It erodes structure. If you take a complex, highly ordered system, like, say, a human being, and you place them unprotected into the vacuum of deep space, what happens?
Complete biological collapse.
That void immediately goes to work violently dismantling that biological order. It pulls the air from your lungs, it boils your blood, it scatters your heat into the cold. It is pure indifference. It is pure dissolution. It is the pure absence of form.
But this is precisely where the genius of the author's metaphysical inquiry begins to truly flex, because by introducing these two cosmic extremes, the black peak and the void, the text creates a profound astronomical ambiguity.
Okay, let's unpack this ambiguity.
This is what Bogle refers to as a shared boundary condition,
Oh,
or more provocatively, the schizophrenia of the void.
the schizophrenia of the void. Wow.
Because depending on your priority as an observer, identifying the peak of order actually becomes incredibly blurry.
Wait, how is it blurry? We just said the black peak is the ultimate order.
Yes, from the perspective of maximal gravitational coherence and the absolute compression of information, the black hole is the peak. But if you are an observer who prioritizes life-generating structure, the emergence of complexity, biology, light, and warmth, then the star looks like the peak of order.
Because it sustains life.
Exactly. A black hole might be perfect order, but it is entirely sterile. It crushes life out of existence just as effectively as the void pulls it apart.
Okay, I see. So the universe is caught between these definitions. And the text asks this massive, almost dizzying question about the very creation of our reality based on this ambiguity. Was the Big Bang, the literal birth of our reality, just a case of cosmic schizophrenia?
The author offers this deeply poetic, almost mystical phrasing here.
Yes, he asks if the universe was born from two mirrors in a dark void that miraculously reflected off one another and magically gave birth to all that is. And I absolutely have to read this direct quote from the text, because in the middle of all this dense astrophysics, Bogle writes, "We are not racist against magic. Perhaps other scholars can weigh in with an open mind."
It is a wonderful, highly unexpected moment of levity.
It really is.
But it also serves as a genuine, profound invitation for cross-disciplinary thought. The author is openly acknowledging that when you push physics and metaphysics to the very outer limits of the cosmic map, where the absolute crushing unity of the black peak meets the absolute infinite nothingness of the void, our standard equations completely break down.
Math stops working.
Precisely. We enter a space where magic or phenomena we completely lack the vocabulary or mathematics for might be the only viable placeholder.
Okay, we need to unpack this boundary where the equations break down, because this is the perfect, seamless bridge into the absolute core paradox of today's deep dive, the metaphysics of TSO and the topology of the dragon.
The core of the entire framework.
We have spent all this time establishing the two great extremes. On one side, we have the black peak, which represents the one, perfect order, total compression, absolute singularity. On the other side, we have the void, which represents the zero. Perfect chaos, total dispersal, pure absence. They seem like the most absolute polar opposites imaginable.
They certainly do. And our innate two-dimensional human perception aggressively insists that they are opposites. But the text lays out the ultimate defining paradox of this same opposite.
The collapse.
When the one and the zero are pushed to their absolute extreme limits, they share a highly persistent, incredibly strange property. They become completely indistinguishable from one another.
Okay, wait, I need you to pause and walk me through this slowly, because intuitively, my brain is rejecting that. How can absolute everything, a black peak and absolute nothing, the void, be the exact same thing?
To understand this, we have to look at what happens to information. Both perfect order and perfect chaos erase all differentiation. Let's think about it analytically.
Okay.
Imagine a universe of total, perfectly compressed unity, a massive black peak where absolutely everything in existence is crushed into a single, identical, infinitesimally small point.
Everything is one point.
In that state, there are no features. There's no up or down, there are no structures you can interact with, there is no contrast. Now, imagine a universe of total nothingness, pure, unadulterated void. In that state, there are also no features, there are no structures, there is no contrast.
Because there's nothing there to contrast against.
Exactly. When you eliminate all contrast, the result is identical regardless of the method. Whether you combine all visible colors of light into a blinding, featureless white, or you remove all light entirely to create a pitch, featureless black, the experiential result is exactly the same. The complete and total loss of discernible form.
Wow.
Too much order is functionally identical to too much chaos.
Too much order is exactly the same as too much chaos. That is a heavy, heavy concept to carry around.
It demands a total reevaluation of extremes.
But thankfully, the text gives us this brilliant, almost deceptively simple thought experiment to make this abstract topology relatable. It's what the author calls the dimensional illusion, and it involves a worm.
The one-dimensional worm.
So, to you listening right now, I want you to actively visualize this with me. Imagine a very simple one-dimensional creature, a worm. Its entire body is just a single, continuous straight line drawn on a page. And it has exactly two physical features. It has a mouth at one end of the line and a tail at the exact opposite end.
Now, in the worm's own one-dimensional reality, living strictly on that single line, those two ends are not poles in a geographical sense.
No.
They're simply the physical endpoints of its own continuous biological structure.
Yeah.
But if you take that worm and you bend it into a circle, forcing its mouth to touch its tail, and you have a two-dimensional observer look down at it, a powerful cognitive illusion occurs.
Right. The 2D observer looks down at the circle and naturally, instinctively infers that it must have a north pole and a south pole. They see true opposites, separated by the maximum possible distance across the diameter of the circle.
It's an imposed duality.
Yes. That duality, that distance, is a complete illusion created entirely by the observer's higher perspective. In the worm's actual lived reality, there are no poles. When the mouth meets the tail, it's just one continuous path that has finally met itself. There is no gap. The author hilariously refers to this precise spot where the mouth and tail meet as the pole pole.
It is a funny term, but the pole represents something mathematically profound, the topological collapse of the illusion of opposites. It demonstrates unequivocally that what appears to be a dualistic reality, two separate opposed forces, is often merely an artifact of the observer's viewpoint, not an inherent property of the object itself.
Because we're viewing it from above.
When the mouth meets the tail, they become the exact same point in a higher topology, even though they appear as complete opposites in a lower one.
I am just imagining being that 2D observer stubbornly insisting that the mouth and the tail are miles apart while the 1D worm is just sitting there in a loop, completely whole. And as the author notes, for publication purposes, he graciously scales this humble worm up to something a bit more mythical. A dragon.
Adding, of course, no offense to worms anywhere.
Naturally, this transforms a quirky biology lesson into a vast, sweeping cosmological diagram. The dragon, coiled into a perfect circle, is the legendary Ouroboros. It becomes the living, breathing diagram of the entire universe.
And if we rigorously map our thermodynamic variables onto this dragon, the structure is perfect. Its mouth represents the one. It is the point of maximal ingestion, absolute compression, and total unity. It is the black peak.
And the tail.
Its tail represents the zero. It is the point of excretion, extension, dispersal, and dissolution. It is the void.
And here's where the geometry clicks into place and gets really mind-bending. Because the dragon is actively eating its own tail, the mouth and the tail are not sitting across from each other on a battlefield. As the text explicitly states, they are adjacent. They are physically touching.
They share a boundary.
The absolute good and the absolute evil are right next to each other.
This is the critical, defining topological insight of the same opposite. The one and the zero are two localized aspects of a single, continuous structure. They only appear to be dual, separate, warring forces because we humans are observing the universe from a limited dimensional perspective that aggressively imposes polarity where none actually exists.
We create the battlefield.
The dragon eating its tail is not merely a poetic symbol of eternity for a tattoo or a tapestry. It is a rigorous topological explanation for why 0 and 1 must inevitably collapse into each other at their extremes.
So if we accept this, if the absolute extremes of the universe, the perfect order of the black peak and the perfect chaos of the void, are actually just the mouth and tail of the dragon touching, it begs a very urgent question. Where do we fit into this cosmic reptile? Where is human existence?
The most practical question of all.
That brings us to what I found to be the most personally impactful part of the text: linguistics, language, and the narrow band of life.
It is the most vital section for us as conscious observers. If the poles are functionally indistinguishable from one another, if total compression and total void both erase all features, it stands to reason that human existence, biology, and consciousness simply cannot survive at the extremes.
Would be crushed or scattered.
Exactly. The text argues that the universe, as we experience it, and absolutely everything within it that we consider real, tangible, and meaningful, exists not at the poles, but strictly in the tension between them.
The narrow band. We basically live in the cosmic Goldilocks zone of thermodynamics.
Precisely. The cosmos, as a hospitable environment, is the narrow band where order resists chaos just enough without collapsing into pure, featureless perfection, and where chaos provides enough raw potential and movement without becoming pure, freezing oblivion.
It's a balancing act.
It is a state of perpetual, living tension. If you slide too far toward the dragon's mouth, you get crushed into a singularity. If you slide too far toward the tail, you dissolve into the void.
Yeah.
Life, consciousness, and reality itself are strictly coordinate dependent. We exist only in that delicate, friction-filled middle ground, the belly of the dragon.
And this isn't just some abstract astrophysics concept that only matters to guys with telescopes. The author brilliantly, and I mean brilliantly, pivots to show how this exact same thermodynamic geometry dictates something we use every single hour of every single day: our language.
Semantics.
The text points out that words literally carry entropy. Our vocabulary is a linguistic reflection of the dragon.
It is a masterful application of the theory to daily life. Let's analyze the linguistic avatar of the void, the zero. What word represents absolute dispersal? The text identifies this as the word whatever.
Whatever. We've all used it. We use it all the time, usually when we are annoyed or frustrated or just too exhausted to care.
It's the default dismissal.
But under the lens of TSO, what are you actually doing to the universe when you say whatever? Like, picture this. My partner asks me, what do you want to do for dinner tonight? And I just sigh and say, whatever. I always knew it was an annoying answer, but you're saying it's mathematically chaotic.
Yes, analytically speaking, it is an act of chaos. When you reply to a direct question with whatever, you are executing a conversational surrender of structure.
A surrender of structure.
You are refusing to apply form to the future. You are refusing to constrain possibilities or commit to a definitive choice. In communicative terms, it approaches pure semantic entropy.
You're just letting the energy dissipate.
You are dissolving the structure of the conversation. You are forcing the other person to expend all the energy required to collapse the wave function of dinner. The text astutely notes that saying whatever isn't morally evil, but it is undeniably structurally anti-order in its effect. It is the heat death of meaning. It is the zero spoken aloud.
The heat death of meaning. That is such a powerful way to frame it. Saying whatever is you just walking away and letting the sandcastle crumble. You are siding with the void.
You are yielding to high entropy.
Now, on the exact opposite end of the linguistic spectrum, what is the word for the one? The text says it is the word one itself, or words of absolute affirmation, unity, and singularity.
Words of absolute affirmation are the linguistic equivalent of the black hole. They compress all meaning, all choice, and all intention into a single undeniable point of coherence. They allow absolutely no room for the randomness or dispersal of whatever.
Between whatever and one lies the entire, vast, messy spectrum of human communication. Every time you open your mouth to speak, you are navigating the belly of the dragon.
It is a constant negotiation.
The text states that the space between these extreme words is filled with the entire spectrum of human intention. Hesitation, selection, affirmation, debate. When you choose your words carefully, when you articulate a complex thought, you are being a star. You are actively creating a local victory of order against the entropy of silence or misunderstanding.
Every single word you speak is a small, thermodynamic act of either resisting or yielding to chaos.
It is a profound, grounding realization. The exact same physical laws governing the ignition of stars and the crushing weight of vacuums are governing your sentence structures and your conversational intent.
This continuity across scales, from the impossibly cosmic to the intimately semantic, is what makes Bogle's theoretical framework so deeply robust. It proves that the geometry holds true at every level of magnification.
Which makes this the perfect time to trace the author's intellectual journey backward a bit. We need to look at the 2017 Tanching and what Bogle calls the early proofs of TSO. Because long before the author was using AI to map out black peaks and semantic entropy, he was sitting alone, observing these phenomena in highly relatable, everyday scenarios.
It is essential to look at these early proofs because they demonstrate the practical, observable application of the theory before it was scaled up to astrophysics.
Right.
In Entry 10 of the original 2017 Tanching, the author formally defines the symbol and the mechanics of the same opposite.
And the text defines it so cleanly. TSO is a concept where one viewpoint is objectively demonstrably true, but the diametrically opposing viewpoint is equally true. To help us visualize this, the author provides a very specific symbol.
The ring.
Imagine a simple, elegant ring. At the very top center of this ring, there is a single diamond. Now, if you start at the bottom and trace your finger up the left side of the ring, you are traveling in one specific direction. If you trace up the right side, you are traveling in the exact opposite direction.
Two divergent paths.
But because it's a closed topological loop, just like our dragon, both of those opposite directions inevitably lead you right back to the exact same diamond at the top. The author concludes this definition with a statement that serves as the thesis for all his work. Wherever we encounter the same opposite, that thing is profound.
Let's examine the first profound example the author offers in these early proofs: the organization of a forest. This perfectly encapsulates how two seemingly contradictory truths can exist simultaneously, entirely based on the observer's dimensional frame of reference.
Okay, let's paint the picture for the listener. Imagine you walk into a deep, dense, old-growth forest. You look around. On the surface, it looks like absolute, unmitigated chaos.
It appears completely random.
Nobody is out there raking the leaves into neat piles. Nobody sweeps the dirt paths. The animals are scurrying about every which way on a total whim. Branches are broken, vines are tangled. Based on our everyday 2D human observation, the statement the forest is completely disorganized is undeniably, objectively true.
However, if you expand your dimensional perspective, if you observe the forest across a longer axis of time and through the lens of ecological interaction, a completely opposite truth emerges.
You see the hidden order?
Exactly. The leaves you thought were chaotic actually grow and fall at highly specific, chemically triggered times of the year, operating like complex biological clockwork.
Right.
The ground is meticulously chemically layered to decompose matter and feed the roots of the exact trees that dropped them. Those animals scurrying around. The ants are actually marching in perfectly engineered, pheromone-guided single-file lines. Every single creature, every single fungus is a masterpiece of the highest evolutionary sophistication.
Yeah.
Therefore, the statement the forest is highly organized is equally objectively true.
Total, random chaos and absolute sophisticated order. It is the exact same forest, the exact same diamond at the top of the ring. It just depends entirely on whether you are looking at it with a narrow, short-term lens or a wide, systemic lens.
Building on that observational shift, the author then scales the logic up significantly for his second early proof, which tackles the concept of motion in an infinite universe.
Okay, yes.
This is a rigorous physical thought experiment that proves the TSO principle mathematically rather than just ecologically.
And I'm not going to lie, I had to read this specific thought experiment 3 times because it broke my brain in the absolute best way. Let's walk through this together, live.
Okay.
The author asks us to consider a scenario where the universe is absolute and infinite in its scope. But we start small. Imagine a tiny spaceship. Let's say this spaceship is in a remarkably tiny enclosed universe that is only exactly 1 kilometer across. The ship is traveling at a constant speed of 1 kilometer per hour. So, from your viewpoint as an observer, it takes exactly 1 hour for that ship to move entirely across the universe. Makes total sense.
Now, we maintain the ship's constant speed, 1 kilometer per hour, but we reset the scenario and dramatically increase the size of the universe. It is now 100 kilometers across. Observing from the outside, it now takes the ship 100 hours to cross. Relative to the totality of its universe, the ship now appears to be moving 100 times slower.
Okay, I'm with you. Now let's push it further. Reset again. Keep the speed locked at 1 kilometer per hour, but make the universe 1 billion kilometers across. From my viewpoint, relative to the whole, the ship is now practically crawling. It would take 1 billion hours. It is moving 1 billion times slower relative to the boundaries of its reality. I'm watching it practically freeze in place.
And here's the terminal step of the thought experiment. Reset one final time, but now make the universe infinitely large. True infinity. As we established, the universe may be infinite in absolute scope. At a constant speed of 1 kilometer per hour in an infinite space, the ship is now moving infinitely slow relative to the whole.
Let me process that. If the space is infinite, my speed of 1 kilometer an hour means absolutely nothing because I will never, ever reach a boundary.
Never.
Moving infinitely slow is functionally mathematically identical to being completely stationary. So here's the massive TSO twist. Moving at 1 kilometer per hour is the exact same opposite as being perfectly still in the grand scheme of things. The motion and the non-motion are the exact same diamond on the ring. I am leaving, yet I am completely stationary.
Exactly. The text provides one absolutely fascinating exception to this rule, however. The only way motion does not reduce to being stationary in an infinite universe is if the ship moves at infinite speed.
Infinite speed.
Yes. If you possess infinite speed, you would traverse the infinite universe in an instant. You would go from position 0 straight to position 1 with 0 perceived acceleration, which, ironically, is just another form of collapsing the poles. Moving infinitely fast means being everywhere at once, which functionally resembles not needing to move at all. You become omnipresent.
It is absolute poetry disguised as physics. It's staggering. And before we begin to wrap up our journey today, we have to touch on the third early proof because it is incredibly visual and something we all experience: the transparency of reality.
Yes, the fog example. It beautifully distills the concept of apparent barriers versus inherent physical properties.
Imagine you are standing outside, maybe near the ocean or in the mountains, and a dense, thick fog rolls in. You look straight ahead, and you cannot see through it. The fog is completely opaque. You are blocked. You are blind. But as you take a physical step forward into the fog, you realize you can see through the immediate few feet of space directly in front of you. The barrier recedes exactly as much as you move.
The profound observation the author makes here is that the very fact you can see the fog at all, the fact that light is successfully traveling from the water droplets into your retina, proves definitively that the medium has a baseline level of transparency.
It has to be transparent for you to see it.
Precisely. The opacity you perceive at a distance is an illusion of cumulative depth. The fog is simultaneously an opaque wall that blinds you and a transparent medium that allows you to see it. It is the same opposite occurring naturally in your daily weather.
Okay, we have covered an immense, staggering amount of metaphysical ground today. To synthesize this journey for you, the listener, and bring it all together, we started by fundamentally shifting how we perceive the base code